right, welcome back to the visual dynamics of Upper Paleolithic art. I'm Julia, and today's episode is called Seeing Through Stone. Now, if you've been following along, you'll know we've been digging into how neuroscience and psychology are, well, kind of rewriting the story of cave art. And today, I want to start with a bit of a personal memory, my first time seeing the Lascaux cave paintings. I remember standing there just gobsmacked thinking, how on earth did people, over 17,000 years ago, manage to create something so alive? I mean, it almost felt magical, but really back then I didn't have a clue about the science behind it. That all changed when I stumbled across Derek Hodgson's 2008 article. If you haven't heard of it, it's kind of a big deal in this field. Hodgson basically launched what's now called visual paleopsychology, which I know sounds like a mouthful, but it's really just about using perceptual psychology and neuroscience to figure out why and how these ancient images were made. Before that, most explanations for cave art were, well, a bit hand-wavy. Lots of talk about shamanism or symbolism, but not much you could actually test. What Hodgson did was bring in experimental methods like actually using neuroscience to see how our brains react to these images. And the wild thing is, the visual system of modern humans is basically the same as it was for those upper Paleolithic artists. So by studying how we see, we can get a window into how they saw. It's a bit like time travel, but with brain scans instead of Doctor Who. And, as we talked about in previous episodes, this approach has really shifted the focus. Instead of just asking what the images mean, we're now asking how the act of seeing, especially in those dark, echoey caves, actually shaped what got painted in the first place. It's not just about culture or ritual, it's about the nuts and bolts of perception. And honestly, once you start looking at cave art through that lens, it changes everything. So let's talk about the caves themselves for a second. If you've ever been in a cave, like a real one, not a touristy one with lights and handrails, you'll know it's, well, kind of terrifying. It's pitch black, the air feels heavy, and every little sound echoes. But what's really interesting is how that environment messes with your senses. Vision is our dominant sense, right? But in the dark, your brain has to work overtime, filling in the gaps, making guesses about what's out there. Psychologists call this visual hypothesis testing. Basically, your brain is constantly asking, is that a rock or is it a bear about to eat me? And here's where it gets really cool. The rock formations in these caves are full of weird, suggestive shapes, curves, bumps, shadows. In the half-light, your brain starts to see things that aren't really there. This is where pareidolia comes in, the tendency to see meaningful images, like animals, in random patterns. But Hodgson takes it a step further with the idea of hyper-images and hyperdolia. It's not just random. Early humans were primed, like literally their brains were tuned to spot animals in ambiguous shapes, because that's what kept them alive out on the hunt. I mean, imagine you're deep in Chauvet Cave, torch flickering, and suddenly you spot what looks like the outline of a lion in the rock. Is it really there? Well, sort of. Your brain is doing this dance between uncertainty and recognition, and sometimes, as Hodgson points out, you get these multi-stable images, like the famous duck-rabbit illusion, but with bison or horses. One moment it's just a lump of stone, the next it's a charging aurochs. That aha moment, when the image snaps into focus, is actually a little burst of pleasure for your brain. It's like solving a puzzle, but the puzzle is the wall itself. And, this isn't just a modern thing. The emotional arousal, the thrill, the fear, the sense of danger would have been even more intense for people back then. The caves were dangerous, unfamiliar, maybe even sacred. So, when an animal seemed to emerge from the rock, it must have felt, well, magical, maybe even a bit animistic, like the cave itself was alive with hidden creatures. It's not hard to see how that could feed into beliefs and rituals, but it all starts with perception. Now, here's where things get really fascinating. Once you've had that first magical experience, seeing an animal in the rock, maybe even drawing it out with a bit of charcoal or ochre, what happens next? Well, according to Hodgson, and honestly it makes a lot of sense, people would come back to the caves to re-experience that feeling. It's like the more you look, the more you see, and every time you spot a new animal shape or revisit an old one, your brain gets another little hit of pleasure. It's this feedback loop: perception, emotion, creation, and then back again. And it's not just about the finished images. The process itself, searching for shapes, making sense of the chaos, turning uncertainty into something familiar, was probably the main event. In fact, a lot of the animal outlines are superimposed, layered on top of each other, almost as if the act of finding and making images was more important than having a perfect final picture. It's a bit like those magic eye posters from the 90s. Once you see the hidden dolphin, you can't unsee it, and you want to show everyone else. And, this ties back to what we discussed in the last episode about how the brain's reward system lights up when we resolve ambiguity. The pleasure of getting it, of seeing the animal in the rock, would have reinforced the whole cycle. Even the danger of the cave, the unstable light, the sense of the unknown, all of that just made the experience more intense. It's like the environment, the brain, and the art were all feeding off each other. So could that sense of magic, that thrill of discovery, still resonate with us today? I think it does. I still get goosebumps looking at those ancient paintings, even though I know the science behind them now. Maybe that's the real legacy of Upper Paleolithic art. It's not just about what's on the wall, but about the way it makes us feel, the way it invites us to see the world differently. And, well, I guess that's why we keep coming back to these caves and to these questions. Okay, I think that's a good place to wrap up for today. Next time we'll dig even deeper into how these magical perceptions shaped not just art, but the whole culture of early humans. Thanks for listening, and as always, keep your eyes open. You never know what you might see in the stone.